Welcome. Today we are focusing on graphing. We have spent the last 2 days on finding the slope from multiple representations, so now today our goal is to be able to graph these equations written in slope-intercept form. Now, if you look, your target is to score at least 80% on a quiz during class. This quiz will be specifically focused on the multiple representations of slope, but we do want to go over graphing with them because it will help you have a better understanding of slope. Now, if you look at your notes for today, we talked a little bit about slope-intercept form yesterday in the video. And if we look, it is y equals mx plus b. M is always going to be your slope and b is your y-intercept. M is also the coefficient of x. So you will hear it called slope, but if somebody asks you for the coefficient, that's also your slope. If we look at our example equation, we have y equals 2x plus 3. 2 is our slope and 3 is our y-intercept. The one thing we need to keep in mind is slope, when we talked about a graph yesterday, is rise over run. Well, if I only have an integer value, I need to turn it into a fraction to make our lives easier when we go to graph. So my integer of 2 is going to become 2 over 1. If we were to divide 2 by 1, it would give us a positive 2. So anytime you have an integer, you're going to make it into a fraction by making the denominator positive 1. Your y-intercept is positive 3, so our point is going to be 0, 3. And keep in mind, your y-intercept is where your graph crosses the y-axis. So in our coordinate point, we always put x, y. Well, if my y-intercept is 3, then my y value needs to be 3. If we look at our steps to graph, your first step is to plot the y-intercept. Again, just as a reminder, your point will always be 0, b. If b is negative, it can be a negative number. If b is positive, it will be a positive number. Step 2 is to identify the slope. Again, this is your coefficient of x. Then you are going to count rise first, then count your run. Once you do that, draw your straight line connecting your 2 points. If we look at our first example, it gives us m is equal to 2/3 and b equals -4. Well, if I talk about slope-intercept form, I have y equals mx plus b, where m is my slope and b is my y-intercept. So, my starting point, I want to start with my y-intercept. To write it as a coordinate, it is going to be 0, -4. So I'm going to go to my graph and count 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to put my first point at 0, -4. Now, my slope is 2/3. Keep in mind, slope is rise over run, or the change in y over the change in x. So I'm going to start at my y-intercept, and I'm going to go up 2 points and to the right 3 points. Once I do that, that is now my second point, and I can draw a straight line connecting them. This becomes the graph of my equation. Again, my rise was 2, my run was 3. Now, as far as direction goes, if we have 2 positive numbers, that means our graph is going in the positive direction from our y-intercept. You will see later on there can also be negatives. That means we are going to either have to count down or count to the left, depending on where our negative is. If we look at our second example, again, our slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Well, I have the equation y equals 3x plus 2, making m 3 and b positive 2. My starting point is my y-intercept. My y-intercept is positive 2, so it's going to become 0, 2, and I'm going to plot that point. My slope in this case is positive 3, but I want my slope to be a fraction, so I have rise over run. 3 is my integer, so I'm going to just put it over 1 because 3 divided by 1 gives me positive 3. So from my point, I am rising 3 spots and I am running 1 spot. Once I do that, I'm going to draw my second point and connect my dots. Again, this is going in the positive direction. I have a positive slope. If you flip your paper over, there are 4 practice problems on the back. Please either review this video again, you may use your notes, and complete those 4 practice problems. When you come back into class tomorrow, I will review them at the beginning of class, and as long as you have a strong understanding, you will be moving on. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow.